How's it going, everyone? Trent Walker here with Between Two Slopes, and I am excited to jump into ski boots with you guys. So last time we got together 2 weeks ago, we talked about ski shapes. So if you're curious about that, check out that episode. It's still up on YouTube. But today, like I said, ski boots. There's a lot of questions, and ski boots really make or break your day. So we're going to make sure that you guys understand what you're buying and understand what you're skiing on so that you can have the best day on the mountain. So feel free to drop any questions in the chat as we roll, and I'm excited. So let's start. So I've got my ski boot here. It's all unbuckled because I was running some tests beforehand. But here it is, my boot. This is the Technica Mach 1, right? I love this boot. It's a 120. So what that means is the flex is a 120. Now, different boots will vary in flex, and that's going to be one of the first things we're going to dive into. But it's important to understand first your fit, like your size, as well as like your last. So that word last is thrown around a lot in the ski world, and it's referring to the width of your foot. So if you have a wide last, that's going to normally say like 102 millimeters, but it's kind of arbitrary because if you get a 28.5 ski boot and you're a wide last, right, at 102 millimeters, but then you go up to a 29.5 ski boot and you're still like a wide last, it's still going to be categorized as a 102 width or last, right? And the reason they do that is just to like categorize it, because really if you're jumping up in size, obviously the last would go up as well. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But let's dive into flex first of all, because that's like one of the biggest benchmarks to determine boots and what boot is right for you. So there's a scale, and it usually starts like kid boots are like 20 flex, and then as they go up you get into like women's beginner boots are like 55, 65, and then as you get into more intermediate women's boots you get into like 75, 85. And then as you get into like beginners men's boots, they're also like 70 to 80, sometimes 90. And then you get into 100. And 100 is kind of the average for male skiers. And 105 is on the intermediate to advanced scale for women. So these numbers, I see your question, Learn to Fern, what is flex? So these numbers determine the flex, but I'll get into it more. So it's good to know the scale and where it ends. It ends at like 130 for recreational boots, 140 and 150 are like ski boot or like race boots. So what flex is how easily you can bend that boot when you're in your skier stance. And why that's important is because if you're going down, if you're hard charging, that boot needs to give you some kind of force back to transmit your power, right? It's all about power transmission, because your heel is going to, or your foot and then your heel is all locked in to get your skis to carve the way that you want them to, right? So if there's any kind of issues with that power transfer, that's what causes like poor carving or discomfort or any kind of serious issues. So flex is just how easily that boot will bend, right? Because those boots are made of plastic. So a beginner boot at like 40 would be really easy to bend, right? And a boot at 130 would be really hard to bend. So it's good to keep that in mind because there's lots of factors that go into that, right? So I pulled up my boot. It's a 120, right? But 120 is it's kind of on that like advanced, intermediate to advanced level. And so it's going to be harder for me when I flex into it. It's going to give me that power back, right? But if you put a beginner skier in my boot, they would hate it. They would never be able to get it to flex, right? Because ski boots are only comfortable and proficient when you get them to flex, right? And so if you can't flex your boot or you overflex your boot, that's going to cause some serious problems. Did that answer your question, DeFern? So, flex. There's lots of things I want to talk about when it comes to flex because it's a number, but it doesn't always truly correlate with what it's talking about. And what I mean when I say that is a Technica 120 does not equal a Rosignol 120. So a Rosignol 120 will actually feel more like a Technica 110. And a Dalbella 120 will actually feel more like a Technica 125, right? So I almost like want to make an Excel spreadsheet with all these different brands. So each brand like follows this, but they're each their own category, I guess. So if you're comparing a Dalbella boot to another Dalbella boot, and one's a 100 and one's a 110, you'll be able to see the difference. But if you're comparing a Rosignol 110 to a Dalbella 100, you might not be able to see the difference as well. So that's one thing that's really important to keep in mind, because let's say, so fitting ski boots is like shopping for kids' clothes. No 4T is created equal. That's exactly right, right? Like your, what is it? Cat and Jack. Your Cat and Jack 4T is not going to be the same as like your Target 4T. So you're exactly right. And it's important to keep that in mind if you're going to be buying a ski boot, because if you think you're a 120, but then you switch brands and all of a sudden a 120 is too stiff for you, you're going to wonder why you're not getting the same performance out of it. So that's one thing that's really key. And there's a couple different designs of ski boots. So you have, like, this is like a traditional, they call it a two-piece. And why they call it that is because you have like your lower cuff down here and then your upper cuff. So 1, 2. However, there are cabrio designs or three-piece designs where they have like your lower cuff and then they have a tongue and then the upper cuff. And cabrio designs, because their flex comes from a different spot, actually will feel stiffer than your typical like traditional boot. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So if you're going and deciding if you're going to buy a three-piece boot or a two-piece boot, you really need to understand what your flex is and what you're going to be looking for. So let's say you're going to a shop and you're like, I'm going to try on some boots. And you get into, so there's, in the ski industry or people that ski, they have this complex around like style and image that is really not great for beginner skiers and most skiers, because they look at boots and they say, well, my ski buddy, he's really good. He told me to get a 130 ski boot, right? Like I need the Hawx Magna 130. That's what he said I need. And that boot could be totally wrong for that individual, because first off, 130 is super stiff. Second off, the Atomic Hawx Magna is a wide boot. And then third, like you're gonna have, it could hurt your feet, right? So, but they think in their head that they have to have the 130 flex because that's what cool guys have, or that's what like all the tough athletes have. But really, they're not gonna be able to get it to bend. So let's walk out this scenario. So my buddy told me I need a 130 Hawx Magna. I walk in and I say, do you have a 130 Hawx Magna? The ski shop employee who doesn't know what he's really doing. He brings me a 130 and I put it on and I'm able to flex it a little bit in the shop, right? And I'm like, between two slopes, Trent at Between Two Slopes says all I need to do is be able to move this thing and we're good. However, it's plastic and you're in a shop and it's worn. So it's going to be easier to flex a ski boot in a shop than it will be on the mountain, right? Because it's going to be cold, you're going to have variable conditions. So you need to make sure that you can almost over flex that boot in the shop, right? Because those are prime conditions, but you're never going to be skiing in 65-degree weather, right? So that's something to keep in mind as well, right? And just like I said, like there's this stigma around having like the stiffest boots so you can be super cool. My boot's a 120, which the stigma would be like, oh, you're a good skier. But I cheat a little bit because there's certain things that you can do to your boot to allow them to flex easier. So here in the back, you can see I've got one pin that's silver and one that's black. So the reason this one's black is because I actually took out one of these and replaced it with just a cover. And that's what that black one is. And what that does, removing that, is actually drops my flex 10. Yep. And if I took out the other one, it would drop it an additional 5, right? So there's certain things you can do to help your boot get those to fit your style better, right? Hey, thanks, Richard. I think they're sick too. So these boots though, right? I was skiing a 120 and I went out on a really cold day and I couldn't get my boot to flex and get my ski to respond as quickly as I wanted to for the turns I was trying to make in the trees. And my buddy I was skiing with at the time, he was actually my manager at the time, he said, you might consider dropping 10 flex points, right? To just help you really get that precision that you're looking for. So I did, never went back. So technically I'm skiing like a 110. But it's important to keep that in mind because you want your gear to work for you more than you work for your gear, right? Like, obviously you're going to be making really like distinct and calculated turns, right? And it's going to take energy to do that. But if you're putting in too much effort per turn, you're not going to be able to ski as long as someone who's in the correct boot and isn't overworking themselves to get that boot. Why is putting ski boots on the actual worst? That's a great question, and we'll get into that. But Learn to Fern, I know who puts your boots on, so I know you're okay. But does that all make sense about flex? It's really important that you're not straining yourself to get this boot to work. So you want to be able to comfortably and easily get this thing to flex, but not have it be too much or too easy to flex rather. All right, now let's talk about getting boots on. So the reason they suck to get on is because they're made of plastic, right? And plastic doesn't like to move. So if you look here, bloop, here's my boot again, super sick. Technica Mach 1 120. So plastic has a memory, right? And that's why we can mold it and shape it and it will stay how it is. So it's important to keep your boot closed when you're not using it because it will maintain that shape, right? But when you're putting your foot in the boot, it wants to stay in that shape. So you're fighting against the shape while putting your foot into it at a weird angle. So the best way you can do this, and if you have a cabrio boot, it's much easier to put your foot in because most cabrio boots, you can just remove the tongue altogether. So as we open up this boot, a lot of people, when they open ski boots to put their foot in, they just go like this. See? And it's not really opening that plastic up, and so their arch always gets caught like right here. When really, if you open your boot like this, to the side, down and to the side, it allows you to get your arch into that boot and make it a lot easier. I don't want to brag, but I can put my ski boots on in the driver's side of my truck without opening the door. Kind of a big deal. It's because it's just all about that leverage, right? Using that tongue to get that leverage. So let's say you find your boot, you're feeling good, and you just purchased it at the shop and you're wondering what's next? How do I make sure this boot is my forever boot? Well, first off, a lot of boot fitters who are worth their salt, I should say, will say that you need to get a footbed in your boot, right? The first order of business is a footbed. And the reason that is because what comes in your actual ski boot is like a really thin, flimsy, and it's actually made to be taken out and get rid of. And so a footbed will help the biomechanics of your foot match up with the actual mechanics of the boot, right? So you can see here, I have a high arch. So this helps my energy transfer without losing it when my arch collapses. So it helps with the fit, it helps with the comfort, and it helps with the energy transfer. So if you're trying on boots, red flag to watch out for. Oh, what are some red flags to watch out for when you're working with a boot fitter? One is, so if you're at a shop and the guy keeps hounding you on one brand, it's probably because that brand is having a competition, and the person who sells the most of that brand in the shop in like a month period gets a free whatever, right? And so they'll push that boot even if it's not necessarily right for you, and I hate that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If they're like really pushing atomics, and atomics are great and they still could be for you, but just be, cognizant of your options. The other thing is, before they even put a boot on your foot, they should ask you like 30 questions. Maybe not actually 30 questions, but there's like 8 to 10 questions that I ask before I even get a boot out of the back to put on someone's foot, right? Because I need to understand where they're skiing, how many days they're skiing, what terrain they're skiing, what terrain they prefer to ski. Did I already say how many days? I need to know if their foot is wide. I need to know how long they've been skiing for, and all these factors factor into a boot that would be good for them, right? So those are some things to keep in mind. If they're just like, yeah, this is a good boot for you, that's probably not a great place to be. So getting a footbed is a great option to help the fit, but when you're buying a boot, the fit should be about 90% out of the box, right? And some boot fitters will be like, oh, like this boot's great, and I'll do X amount of work to make sure it really fits for you. And no, if he's doing X amount of work, he's gonna charge you extra for that work to take away life out of your boot, right? Because when you buy a boot and it comes with one of these in it, it's called that's the shell. Anyways, this thing, I can't remember its name for some reason. This has a certain amount of life in it, and it's the least amount of life out of anything in your boot. And the reason that is because it has foam in here, right? So you want your boot to be pretty close to your exact foot. And then as you go ski it, it will finish off the last 10% of the boot fitting process. Or you can skip that. What's up, Big Cat? You can skip that process and do a heat mold, but when you do, it zaps 10 days out of your liner. That's what it's called, a liner. It zaps 10 days out of your liner, like gone, right? So if you had 60 days in your liner, you could go ski 5 days, and the 5 days might be a little uncomfortable, but it will break in the boot, and then you would net positive 5 days out of the lifespan of your liner. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Out of the box, 90% fit, and then go from there. Learn to Fern had a question. What about used ski boots? Big no. So used ski boots are a little questionable. Once again, it comes down to that liner, right? So if they have like a shell, and the shell seems to be in pretty good shape, so the liner's taken out of here. If they have the shell and it's in pretty good shape, but their liners are thrashed, if you can get a good deal, just buy them and then replace the liner. But sometimes the liner can be like $150, $200, so it might be worth it just to buy a new boot. But if you're keeping your eye out on something, you find a good liner on sale, and then you find someone who's selling a ski boot that isn't super thrashed, like that's great. But if you buy a ski boot, a used ski boot, and you don't replace the liner, your boot will never fit your foot correctly. And the reason that is because if that person has 10 or more days, that liner will always be fit to their foot and you can't get that back, right? So it's really important to keep those in mind as you're looking at used equipment and used ski boots in particular. So those are some of the bigger red flags to keep in mind. And there is work that you can do to your ski boot. So some ski boots, as you can see, mine here has like dimples. And what that allows you to do is you can actually heat up the shell of this boot, and then it's called a punch, and it's when you punch out the plastic. But those dimples allow you to have excess plastic, so that when you do punch it, you're not weakening the plastic in those areas. So those are in extreme cases. Like if you have a bunion, or like a really big, they call it a sixth toe, and it's just like the last appendage on the outside of your pinky toe. It's really important that you take that into account. But if you're buying a used boot and you see shell work, you can't undo shell work. So is replacing a liner difficult or expensive? It can be expensive depending on what you get, but it's not difficult at all. So here's my liner, here's my shell. I just took it out, super easy. I just put it back. Putting it back in is actually the hard part. And then these last forever. So you can just replace these as you get a new boot. And if you were to, there's like generic ones and custom ones. So this is a custom one, but generic ones are great for literally 75% of people. If you have a weird foot, kind of like I do, then a custom one's a good option. But you can just take these out. Like if I were to go buy a new ski boot, I could just take this out and go to a ski shop and put this in and try boots with this. And if a ski shop is like, no, you can't do that, first off, they just lost the sale, because you absolutely can do that. It's super easy. But recently I've been, because I like helping my friends and I know what I'm looking for, like I'll just answer people's questions and then point them to what they should try online. And there's certain websites online that have really great return policies so that you can, try your boot, walk around in your house for a little bit, and then if you don't love it, just put it back in the box and send it away. There is nothing quite like trying them on in the shop though, because you can get multiple and you don't have to deal with any kind of hassle. But online, if you really can narrow it down to one or two boots, you just order them both and then return one. So should I keep my boots buckled when I'm not using them? Does that even matter? Yes, you should keep them buckled. Once again, it's because plastic has a memory, right? So it will remember being open. And so if I stored mine like this, and you see how my buckles are on the inside, if I keep them stored like this, when I pull them out at the end of, or at the beginning of my next season, the inside, these buckles are going to remember being on the inside of this, and this is going to be flexed out easier. So you should always store them done up. So great question. It absolutely does matter. And that reminds me of a funny story that I'll share with you guys. Unless you have more questions. But I had a guy, it's like Christmas vacation, I'm in the shop, and this dude comes in and he's pissed. And there's a line off from the counter of people I'm helping, and he comes in and he's like, I need to talk to a manager right now. And I was the assistant manager at the time, so I was like, give me 1 minute, sir, I'll be right with you. And I could look down at his boot. He came in with one boot on and one boot off, and I was like, how did he get down the canyon? So anyways, he came in. I already knew what the problem was when he walked in. So I finish off checking these people out. And the next guy, I was like, hey, do you want me to check you out real quick? He's like, no, like, please help this guy. And I'm sure he was like, I can't wait to see this kid just get wrecked. So The problem was this guy had his boot like this. I don't even know if I can do it. Ugh. Anyways, so he had his buckle was like this, but his other buckle was underneath the secondary cuff, right? So what that does is it makes it so that it's really hard to get out. And he told me, I let him just light me up. He told me that he had all these guys at the Brighton shop, like helping him try to get his boot off, and no one could get it off. And so I got to drive down here, and it's our fault because we gave him a broken boot. So I let him just like chew me out. And then I said, do you want me to fix it? And he said, yeah, like good luck. So I got down and I did up his power strap, which is this thing. So I did this up so that it took the pressure off of here. And then I undid it and took him out. And then he took his boot and walked out without saying anything. It was legendary. So there's just like tricks to the trade of ski boots. We could talk about ski boots and dive into ski boots even more so, right? I kind of did like red flags, things to look for in some of the surface level stuff. If you guys want to know more, like drop some comments. I'd love to, do more deep dives if that's what people want. But leave a comment what you're looking for when it comes to ski boots and any kind of questions you have, because I feel like this is where the most questions come from, because ski boots will make or break your day, right? I may have missed it, but what are your thoughts on used boots? You find a good used one? You can. I said it earlier, so we won't like re-dive into that. It's something to very much be cautious of, because liners can get packed out really easy and you can't like get any life back, and so the boot will never truly form to your foot. No worries, I'm here for it. So that's kind of all I've got on ski boots today. But there's all sorts of mechanics and different things. Like I didn't dive into lugs, I didn't dive into compatibilities, but the reason being is, a lot of people just have questions on flex and fit and what they should be looking for, right? And so that's what I wanted to tackle. And one more thing I'll leave you guys with: if you're buying a ski boot, you don't look for your size, because your ski boot size is actually going to be smaller than your actual boot size. To give you like a reference, I'm a 9.5 shoe, and so people would be like, oh, you're like a 27.5. No, I'm a 25.5. I actually kind of have little kid feet, and I wear shoes that are too big. So yes, keep that in mind. You want your boot to be as true to your foot as possible, because the least amount of movement you have in that boot, the more performance you're going to get, and actually the more comfort you're going to get. What boots would you recommend for a first timer, especially someone who's not sure if they'll like it? First, I would say like rent, at least for one or two, or if you can get like a screaming deal on some new ones. But it depends on like your commitment level too, because let's say you're like, oh, I just want to go and like try it out, then go rent. Great, awesome. But if you're like, hey, like I'm all in, like I have like money set aside so I can buy a setup, then you wouldn't want to buy like a beginner boot, because you're going to quickly outgrow that. So something in like the 90 flex range or like the 100 flex is a really good like beginner to intermediate to allow you to learn in but not be too aggressive for you. How well do the boots do for running sprints? They're terrible, but I did watch someone sprint in their ski boots to catch the bus. It was legendary. Would renting some be realistic? Yes. So it's going to only be for like one day, right? But then you can get a feel for it. Rental boots suck, right? And so when people are like, I want to start like skiing and I want to stop renting, but I don't want to like fully commit, I always tell them to buy boots first, because boots like they'll last a long time, but also you'll get a discount on renting skis if you already have a pair of boots. And it's the first piece of equipment that will really up your game, right? Because if you're in a comfortable pair of boots that's made or that like fits you really well, you'll be able to see that that upgrade or those benefits so much better than a rental boot. Let's see. Is there a boot that Usain Bolt endorses? I don't know. Ski boots make me want to be a snowboarder. Yeah. Ski boots kind of suck. Snowboard boots feel more like normal shoes. They have really cool BOA systems too. They've added BOA systems to ski boots, but they're still new. So there's stuff that still needs to be worked out. BOA systems on the upper cuff, I'm all about. BOA system, or I'm not all about. BOA systems on the lower cuff, I'm all about. So yeah. You mean pillows on your feet compared to ski boots, aka medieval torture devices? Yeah. And going downstairs in ski boots is next to impossible. So yeah, you guys are great. I hope I answered lots of your questions. It's really important to have a good fitting boot. It'll make or break your day. If you are someone like me and have a high arch, it's important to keep that in mind as well, because a high arch will be one of the first things that make your foot go numb, because you've got lots of blood vessels on top of your foot, and if you put too much pressure on there, that'll end your day because your toes will get really cold really quickly. But thank you all so much for jumping on. Super excited to continue Between Two Slopes. If you haven't, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe for more content, and drop a comment what you want to talk more about. I have a whole schedule for the season, but I am happy to adjust that to what you guys are looking for. You can also follow us on Instagram. I've been posting every day, so want to make sure you guys have the best knowledge you can to enjoy your days on the mountain. So thank you so much. No worries on being late to the stream, just glad you're here. And I'm happy to give more gear advice. So you guys have a wonderful night, and thank you so much for being here.